All right, welcome. Hey, it's the Genesee County Compassion Club show. I'm your host, Jeremy. Glad to be back here in the studio, allpointstv.com. How's everybody doing this wonderful holiday season? John?
Yeah, exactly. I'm kind of envious. You were gone to a nice place last week. We were getting hit with snow, and you were like totally away from it. So I'm envious as hell. But,
yeah. I won't be complaining. I'm sure most of you are aware I was in Orlando last week for a little family event. We had a wonderful time. Just want to thank for everyone holding the fort down while we were gone. But man, I'm glad to be back. I still love my home state, even though I'm not sure why, but I do love it here, and I think it's because of all of you, quite frankly. If it wasn't for you guys, I'd probably be long gone. But at any rate, I'm here. I'm glad to be here, and I want to share some information with you guys today. We've got some great stuff going on down at the club that I want to share with you. Holiday time is a great time for all of us to get together, and the G3C is no exception. So let's get it going. All right. First thing I want to mention is our Pause for Cause. We do this every year, and we love our animals. That's part of the reason I was out of town. I was at a dog show. Have you ever seen Best in Show, the movie? You need to check it out. But yeah, man, we love our animals at the G, and we want to help them out. We help out a lot with the Genesee County Humane Society, and this year's no exception. So we're asking all of you, if you can, to bring in dog supplies, animal supplies. We're talking food, litter, whatever, toys, grooming items, and we're going to be donating them to the Humane Society on your behalf through the G3C. It's something we do every year. We've got a Christmas tree down there at the club that we like to decorate with dog items, pet items, and whatever you got laying around the house. Maybe Fido didn't want it, didn't like that bag of treats, whatever. We do want them to be new and unopened, but at any rate, if you can, please donate our Pause for Cause. We like to help out if we can. We also sponsor, just so you guys know, we also sponsor a few cages down there at the Humane Society, which means you guys, the G3C members, are helping to pay for the care of a few animals throughout the entire year. So you provide all their necessary care, everything that animal needs, everything that those animals need that are going to be in that cage throughout the year. So this could be actually multiple animals that get helped out. But you guys do that, and that's a part of this as well. So thank you very much. And any support you can lend on this is greatly appreciated. Okay. Next item of support I want to bring up and mention is the soup kitchen. We're doing that, of course. It's the last Friday of the month, and this time of year is a great time to help out. I know a lot of you have that on your heart. You want to give, and that's awesome. So give at the soup kitchen if you can. Okay, that's the last Friday of the month. Next item we got coming up here, I want to mention our club Christmas party. That is going to be Saturday. What was the date on that, John? I forgot to write the doggone date down. It's this Saturday. All right? It's not that complicated. It's this Saturday. It's the Saturday before Christmas, right?
The 23rd.
There you go. Saturday before Christmas. So it's going to be at 12 o'clock. The club's open anyways. And there's no charges, no fee, there's no tickets. Just come on down. Enjoy Christmas with us. We're going to be doing a white elephant gift exchange. I believe that goes on at like 4 p.m. We're going to have special food items on the menu, and it's going to be a lot of fun. Dress up if you want to. I mean, this is just a good time to get together. Bring a plate of cookies if you want. Bring a dessert to pass. We're going to have a dessert table there, and a white elephant. If you don't know what that is, what that basically is you go rummage through your home, find that item that you don't even know what it's for. You haven't looked at it in 3 or 4 years, and give it away. You wrap it up, you put it in a box, and you give it away. And then we do this little exchange thing where we kind of open up prizes or presents, and then some people get to steal those presents, and then some people get to steal them back, and it's a lot of fun if you've never done a white elephant gift exchange. But do not go out to the store and buy something. Okay, that's not what this is about. This is about finding that weird one-off item that you just think would make a great gift that you have absolutely no use for, but somebody else will. You know what I'm saying? Like, your junk is somebody else's treasure. It's the time to take advantage of that with the white elephant gift party. So that's what we want you to do. It's a blast. It's a lot of fun, and it's a great way to clean out the closet. All right, so 4 o'clock, be ready for that. Be ready for some good food, and bring a dish to pass if you want. If you don't want to, that's fine. Just come on down, hang out, have a good time, eat some cookies, and we're going to enjoy it. It's a holiday season. All right. Another thing I want to mention, this isn't an event, but it is something that's near and dear to our hearts. we had a member that we all deeply love and care about, Stephen Machon, who passed away unexpectedly this last week. And unfortunately, Stephen's family does need help with raising some cost or some funds for his funeral expenses. So we have a fundraiser set up for him. Of course, we'll take donations for him down at the club and make sure that his family gets that. But we love Stephen, and anything that you can do to help support him and his family would be great. So appreciate that. All right, moving on here. I want to talk about some rules. I want to talk about some marijuana stuff. Get you guys caught up. While we were gone over this past week, the state did roll out the new rules. They're calling it the emergency set of rules. This is for the new Michigan Medical Marijuana Licensing Board Act, if you will, and their rules they're out. You can go to the website, you can download them. We talked about this, I believe, a couple weeks ago on the podcast, but you guys can check them out for yourself. I expect those rules to be updated and amended and added to and changed as they will be. And as I stated, the state is calling these the emergency rules. So they had to get them out by a certain date. That way they would be compliant with the requirements of the law. And then they're leaving the door open for adjustment thereafter. So the rules are out. The applications are being taken. They started taking applications in person on December 15th. Also, their online application process is also available, and I understand there are people completing applications online as well. There's an interesting article. You can check it out for yourself. It's in the Detroit Free Press. Talks a little bit about what it takes to fill out one of these applications. It has a couple neat interviews with people down in the Detroit area who are attempting to get into the process, and it kind of details some of the obstacles that people are having to face that are trying to get this process completed. One of the big ones, obviously, is money, and so the average cost that they're stating would be for a provisioning center would be somewhere in the neck of $300,000 to $400,000. And on up from there, based on what it is you're looking to accomplish. So, better have an attorney and better have lots of money. That's all I got to say about that. All right, moving on here. I don't want to talk too much more about that Medical Marijuana Licensing Board Act because that's not what we're doing. That's not what we do, and we don't really care about that. The G3C is not a dispensary. We never have been. There's a post on Facebook you can read. I'd encourage you to if you haven't seen it. Kind of explains why the G3C is not closing, and we're not going to close. It's because we're not a dispensary, never have been. We're not a provisioning center, never have been. We're a place that operates and facilitates the original language of the Michigan Medical Marijuana Act that was passed back in 2008. We're a facility where patients can meet caregivers, where caregivers can meet patients, and a whole lot more. So
I have people that I talk to on Facebook and stuff from other states, and they always want to refer to the G3C as a dispensary, and I always have to correct them because in their law, especially in California and other states, their dispensaries they have. And I said the Compassion Club basically is a meeting place, and I have to make that distinction. So, and that's always good to bring up because you never know who you're going to have a first-time viewer or listener, and that makes a difference.
It is confusing. There's a lot of nuances. We're talking legal beagle stuff. And so, to the layman's person right off the street who doesn't know anything about Michigan's medical marijuana environment, the rules, the program, the laws, it can be a lot to explain to someone. I was having a conversation with somebody on the plane and who really had no idea but was interested. And, how much time do you want to spend, explaining all of the different things with the law and how it works and so on and so forth? I mean, the important thing is that if you're a patient, you can get access, you can go to a doctor, you can get your card, and once you have your card, then you can start exploring your options for cannabis acquisition. I wish it wasn't so complicated, and in reality it really isn't. You have the ability to produce your own as a patient here in Michigan, and if you don't want to do that, you have the ability to find a caregiver who will produce it for you. If you don't want to do that, you can wait around maybe a few more months and you'll have another option as well. So pretty simple all in all. Now if you're looking to start a business, that's a whole nother conversation and one that's not going to be answered in a few minutes as well, I would think you would expect. I mean, even if you were going to go start a car wash business or like a house cleaning business, it's not a 5-minute conversation. So when people ask those questions, I think it's tough to give them a generalized answer and still be accurate, but you also have to be careful about what you're asking for. So But at any rate, yeah, that's where we're at. The G is based on the original premise of the law. That's how we always have functioned. That's how we're going to continue to function. Because at the end of the day, you do have to have caregivers, you do have to have patients, and you have to have a spot where they can actually meet each other. And that's what we are. So pretty simple. All right, moving on here. I want to talk about some other things that are going on. One of them that I thought was pretty good, and this was introduced on a federal level. It was introduced by Senator Cory Booker, who, honestly, if you ask me my opinion of this particular senator, my opinion is still out to lunch. I mean, he's introduced a few different types of acts, and one of them I think is the Net Neutrality Act, which whole nother subject, and I'm not going to get into on this show. So let's just say that I'm not exactly a fan of this guy, but this particular act that he presented, that he is putting his name on, I think is a good one. So let's get into this. It's called the Marijuana Justice Act of 2017. Now hopefully that'll be updated here in another month. But at any rate, what the core of the act is, and again, this is a federal bill that is being proposed. What it is proposing is that it would simply remove marijuana from the Controlled Substances Act. So we've talked about marijuana needing to be rescheduled. It absolutely does. And I think the best rescheduling that could happen for marijuana is to have it be removed from the Controlled Substances Act. And that's what this act would do. Number two, it would also provide expungement and pathways for people who are currently serving time for marijuana-related crimes. So that's another important factor. I mean, we have people out there that are affected, they have misdemeanors, or they have felonies on their record from a victimless crime that would, in a sense, now become something that's completely legal. They should certainly have their record wiped clean and give them an opportunity for a fresh start under these circumstances. This bill would provide that for them. That's an excellent thing. It would also allow government to withhold funding from states that have high incarceration rates in regards to marijuana crimes. So a little bit of a incentive from the federal government, a little bit of a incentive for the states to comply, and then it does the appropriate things. If you remove cannabis from the Controlled Substances Act, it would eliminate the banking issues that we've talked about on the program. It would eliminate the states and the federal government superiority question, and it would really open up the door for all of these states to take part and participate in this growing economy. So all in all, I would say this is a very good act, and it is something that you should support if you can. So the Marijuana Justice Act of 2017, you could call up your House representative or your federal senator and let them know that you support this. It's a good idea. So, all right, moving on here. Another issue I want to talk about. This is in Canada. You guys are probably familiar with Mark and Jody Emery. They're longtime cannabis activists. Mark Emery was years ago put in prison, U.S. prison, for selling seeds across the border. Now they are in trouble again, and it is this time for operating dispensaries in Toronto, I do believe. Now, mind you, right now the government in Canada, and I think they call it the Crown. Is that right, John? Call it the Crown. Anyways, the government in Canada is basically rolling out legalization. Now they're doing it sort of monopolized, big corporate style, so they're not really leaving room for the smaller people like Mark and Jody. And Mark and Jody have been fighting for cannabis law reform for 20 years or better. They put their life on the line, and they've done it again. So they got in trouble, they got convicted, and in order to avoid jail time and in order to avoid prosecution of all their employees, they decided to go with being fined. Their fines are now nearly $400,000 from the Canadian government for cannabis trafficking and so on. So I'd encourage you to read up on it. You can go to leafly.com, check out the story. It is it's definitely a sad one. These are great people. I've had a chance to meet Jody at one point. These people have been putting their hearts on their sleeves now for a long time for this industry. They're not rich. They don't have the money to pay these fines. And I'm not asking you to pay their fines for them. I'm just asking you to be aware of the hypocrisy that can take place within your own government. And this is easy to watch because it's across the border and it doesn't directly affect us, but it could certainly very well affect us. And we could see examples of the same thing going on right here in our own home state. So rather than just be victims, stand up and support now. And then maybe this type of thing can't, or we won't let it occur again, I guess is what I should say. So
I would think, though, underneath Trudeau's government, the guy who's the prime minister now of Canada, I thought this would be I didn't think this would be such an issue.
Yeah.
And that's what we were led to believe. When I first, because I just only catch tidbits of Canadian information.
And that is the sentiment right now, at least in the growing populace in Canada. It mirrors the United States. It's really no different. The average adult person in Canada doesn't have a problem with recreationalized cannabis use for adults. They don't have an issue with it. The polls show it. They've changed the law. The government's going to do it. So the fight in this is who's going to do it, who's going to get the money, how is it going to be done. And it's very apparent that the government up there is, basically standing up for their corporate interest, if you will, and making sure that there's no room at the bottom of the ladder for people to try climbing up, like Mark and Jody. So, this is, you think, public opinion is one way, and that they're going to support that, but at the same time, the public is allowing the government to spend money to prosecute these people, to go after them, to close down shops, to put these people out of business, all of their employees out of business. Their company, Cannabis Culture, not only was it responsible for multiple dispensaries in and throughout the Canadian area, but it also was responsible for media publications. And so they had a pretty good network. They had a pretty good business going on with a number of employees. And again, this isn't big business. This is small, maybe 20, 30 employees. And they're not rolling in money. They don't have a lot of money. They're using all of the money that they do make to keep the doors open, like most small businesses. So, it's sad when you see this kind of thing happen because it really is truly Hippocratic. Without a better description. It's just, okay, they can do it, but you can't. And that's essentially what's happened here. So, I think we need to learn from these stories and hopefully not allow it to happen to us as well. So, all right. Okay. That's it for the marijuana news. There's not a lot, you know what I mean? Right now it's a holiday season. There's no new research that has popped up. One thing I did want to say about research, and this is in regards to the federal bill I just mentioned, the Marijuana Justice Act of 2017. By removing cannabis from the Controlled Substances Act, it does allow for research. And while I think that's all in good and dandy, I think I've talked about this on the program before, research for cannabis has already been done. It's been done extensively, over and over again, by numerous different physicians, by numerous different health groups. What we need, in addition to the Controlled Substances Act to be changed, is we also need the policy which is ran by the United Nations for drug control, UNDCP. These guys set the rules for all nations. And then our nation, like us, nations like Canada, voluntarily comply to these requirements. Now, in some cases, we have not complied, like allowing adult cannabis recreational sales in our country to happen. That's actually against the UNDCP policies. But we've gone ahead and done it anyways. So there are abilities or exceptions that can be made within these UN development policies, but really what we need is the UN to change as well. Doing this will not only allow other countries to step up and to legalize and to make medical marijuana products available, but it would also allow these countries to share their research. And this is huge, because not only is the research already done, but the cost alone, the cost that we spend in research in this country is astounding. And not that that's a bad thing, but if we're researching something that's already been researched, well, that's redundant. And what we need to do is to utilize the information that's already out there. There's been extensive studies on marijuana use in Israel, in India, in Jamaica, studies that rival any other type of medicinal study. And in fact, some of these studies were more extensive, had more examples, had more cases, and were done over longer periods of time than any other medical studies ever performed. So when we take that into consideration, the amount of material and information that's already out there, already available, and has already been proven by professionals in the industry. And we're not talking, it wasn't proved by Cheech and Chong or, endorsed by, Cypress Hill. We're talking about stuff that was done by physicians in the field, by scientists, and stuff that it's not refutable. It's the same research that we're going to go do over again. Why do we want to do that? We don't. What we need is a change.
When I was still on the opposite side of this issue, I remember arguing with people at the university, and they were saying, I said, well, we don't know the effects, and this guy, that's BS. And he started listing the amount of research just off the top of the head that he had been aware of. This is like 20-some years ago.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, it is a well-researched. I mean, probably just along up there with alcohol, because we've all seen that.
Yeah, cannabis is actually one of the most well-researched medicinal plant materials in history.
And you look at all the willing participants in each study, too. That's the big difference here.
Well,
you get some prescription drug.
You're right, John. I mean, you have willing participants in the study. And, of course, we're talking about actual real studies that were put on by doctors. We're not talking about Woodstock, where somebody just showed up and made observational reports and took anecdotal evidence. We're talking about actual real studies here. So the point I'm making is if we're going to be moving forward in a positive stance, going to be moving forward in a sensible way, let's continue that momentum and let's have a change at the UN level. We need to ask for that to be changed as well so that we don't waste our resources, our time, and in the interim, if we do choose to make the wrong choice, let's think about the consequences. Number one, we have the cost. We've already talked about that. But number two, let's look at the cost of the patients, the people that would be waiting for this medicine. They've already waited long enough, mind you, but why would we want them to wait even further? When we know that the proof is out there, when it's already being done, when treatments that we're seeking to validate are already being given in other countries, why would we want these patients to wait? It makes no sense. So hopefully we can have this done in a sensible manner, as I stated, and it is something that needs to be on the pressing minds of us as activists, because it's one of those things that gets forgotten about. A lot of people don't even think about the UN when it comes to needing to make policy changes. And it's certainly having our Controlled Substances Act is no small feat. So I can understand how this gets lost in the priority shuffle. But it's one of those ones that needs to be at the forefront, because the cost of doing it the other way around, you're talking about cost of human lives, and of course you're talking about an economic cost as well. So I'd like us to not make those kinds of mistakes. That's what I'm pushing for here. So if you get a chance, or when you talk to your representatives, mention that as well too, because it's something that they might not even be aware of. Okay? All right. In the news, other news, there's not a lot else, like I mentioned before, going on. I saw there's some information here from the VA issuing some new medical information, new policy for veterans. I don't think it's necessarily a new policy after I read through it. But basically, VA physicians are not allowed to make prescriptions for marijuana. They're not allowed to make recommendations either, for those of us that understand the difference between the two of those things. But the VA will not stop treating you as a patient if you go somewhere else and get your medical marijuana recommendation, and that's guaranteed. So that's a good thing, and that has been the policy now for past 4 or 5 years. It does seem to further encourage doctors to more closely track and record information about veterans' use of medical marijuana, and I have heard of some of this already going on. And some of it, what I've heard, has been positive. The doctors are positively looking at the anecdotal evidence that their patients are exhibiting through their marijuana or cannabis use. So they're seeing positive results in their patients where previously they did not, and they want to know why, and they want to track that progress, and they want to see how it develops. So I think that's a good thing. It may be used as empirical evidence for them to further change their policies in the future. So that's good to go. The new policy that they put out there is set to expire at the end of 2022. The previous policy that I mentioned was enacted in 2011, so yeah, it was about actually 5-6 years. It technically expired on January 31st of 2016, but it remained in place until the enactment of this new directive that they just recently passed. So, the biggest thing here says veterans must not be denied VHA services solely because they are participating in state-approved marijuana programs, which was their previous policy. So I'm glad they're standing by that. They're not changing anything, and that's good news for all of our VA members. So, all right, guys, it's good to be back in the studio with you. I know it's a short, brief show, but, quite frankly, I've got Christmas shopping to do, and I got to get my ass back out there, okay? So don't forget about your shopping either. But John, thanks for being with me back in the studio here, allpointstv.com. It's always a pleasure to be in here. Make sure you check all their other podcasts for important information about Flint. Find out what's going on in your city. Guys, thanks for being with me at the Genesee County Compassion Club. I look forward to seeing you there soon. And take care, enjoy the holidays, and hug your family and friends. Tell them you love them. All right? Have a good week.